Seems like every other week now we see a brand new electric dirt bike hit the market and we get a dozen or so videos from the usual suspects, myself included. And I'm sure with this new bike in a box you're expecting me to say, here's another one, but I'm not gonna do that. My garage is a lot wider than I thought it was. But of course you knew that, you saw the thumbnail and you can read. Today we're turning back time, looking at one of the OGs to see how it holds up these days. You know, now that I think about it, I guess I am here to say, here's a brand new one, but there is a twist. More on that in a second. First, let's see what we got. Tuttio Soleil. This right here is the brand new 48-volt electric dirt bike alternative to the Mototex and e-boxes that we've seen so far. Oops, sorry, I was accidentally looking at the script that I wrote for this back in 2024 when I was supposed to receive this bike originally. Boy, have times changed. Even though that was only 2 years ago, a lot's happened. So many offerings have hit the market that this is now the old man in the bunch, and the Mototech 48 volt, that's just plain ancient. I don't think I've even mentioned what this bike is, not that you really need to, because this is the good old Tudio Soleil. Did you know it's pronounced Soleil? I found that out. Soleil means sun in French. But specifically, this is the Tudio Soleil01 LO, quite the mouthful. The LO is the new bit in the model name. It stands for Lava Orange, and can you take a guess at what that means? And I wasn't sure whether or not I would actually like the painted frame in person rather than seeing it on camera or in photos, but it actually looks pretty good. It is kind of a flat matte orange, and personally I prefer glossy stuff, but it's not too bad. And if you look really closely, I don't think the camera is going to give it justice, but there's the tiniest little hint of a silver metal flake in there, which I think is a really nice touch. And outside it looks about the same. I was hoping that the little metal flake would shine a bit more, and maybe if it was glossy it would, but this is pretty muted and just orange. But speaking of outside,
let's get outside and ride it. Although I immediately want to pull over because I want to explain something on this bike, my perception of this bike, which is different from actually seeing it in person. For some reason, I thought this bike was smaller than it was, and I have no idea why, because it's got a big, chunky frame, so you'd expect it to be chunky, and it is chunky. We can also see one of the things that Tudio has changed since first releasing this bike, which is the gripper seat. It is really nice. It's got 4 ribs right here, and it's a good material, and this is like the thickest, cushiest stock seat on any of these bikes that I've ever seen. I have not ridden this very much, but I can tell already that this is going to be a super comfortable ride, especially for someone who's big, 6 foot tall like myself.
It is nice to see that Tudio has been listening to us over the years and actually applying changes to this bike. One of the original complaints on this bike in a lot of videos, and something that I would have mentioned in my video had I had the opportunity to do so a couple of years ago, are the fenders. The original fenders were way too short, way too dinky, and basically one step above a piece of paper. This bike, however, now has dedicated dirt bike style fenders both front and rear. Although that said, they are black plastics, and I figured that they would go orange because why not? You're going all out on the frame anyway. And it's a shiny black, which again is a contrast to the matte finish on the painted orange frame. So personally, I think it would have looked a little bit better if they went with a glossy coat on all of the orange painted frame and swing arm parts, so that way everything's nice and shiny, and maybe it sparkles a little bit with that metal flake in there. That would have been a really nice touch.
You may have also heard this thing beeping at me since I pulled it over, and that's because another feature that this bike has now is a magnetic kill switch, and it's orange. I also like that they put it on the left-hand side rather than the right-hand side like the Hey Bike villain does, because that's the hand that I use to turn on and off my recorder, and that way I'm not accidentally killing the bike. And while we're out here, we're gonna do a little side quest. Where are you? It's gotta be here somewhere. Oh, is that it? That might be it. That's pretty beat up, but maybe it'll actually work. If you saw my short last week, you'll understand what that was from. But anyway, now that we got a long straight, let's see how fast it can go. Yeah, I was in sport. And it's topping out at 18 miles an hour? That's not right. Okay, so let's try to unlock this. I think we key on, hold the brake and the M button for a few seconds. Let's see if that did it. There we go. Thanks, Pat, for putting your video out before mine. And is this common knowledge that this comes locked from the factory? I didn't know that. Tudio certainly didn't tell me. Okay, now that we have a straight and we have speed to go with it, let's see how fast we can go. Must not forget the lie detector. Locked and loaded. 3, 2, 1. The acceleration feels really good. It's very smooth. Got some speed bumps to contend with. Whee! Not letting that stop me. 35. Come on, 36. I saw 36 for a split second there. Come on, come on. Another 36. I think 36 is going to be what we have. But we'll let the truth ring free, which is 34 miles an hour. That's actually not bad. That's pretty close to the gauge here. I've seen it a lot worse. It would show like 40, 41, 42 miles an hour and then only go like 33, 34, but this is actually not that far off.
So it's still a little bit off from the website's claimed top speed of 37 miles an hour. However, I admit that I'm not exactly the smallest rider in the world, so I believe it. Some other stats for you. This bike has 3,000 watts and actually 162 foot-pounds of torque, which is pretty impressive for a bike this size. Most of these things only have about 110 or less. Also, this bike is a 48 volt, in case I didn't mention that, but it's Tudio, so I think you would probably know it at this point. It has a 21 amp hour capacity, so it's basically the exact same 48 volt battery that you see in all the other recent stuff.
Again, that's kind of annoying that this comes locked from the factory at a max speed of 20 miles an hour, regardless of what speed type you use. Kind of wish they advertised that a little bit more. Maybe it's one of those things that they're not supposed to. I guess it's up to people like me and up to people like Pat to tell me that that's a thing and that there's a way to get around it. I mean, I guess while we're at it, we can complain a little bit more on the bike because it has a few things that they didn't address in the couple years that it's been out that people have complained about, which is like the display, for example. Actually, the whole display throttle key combo, I'm just not a fan of any of it. First of all, the display is pretty basic. There's only one button, which is annoying. There's no plus minus buttons, so it's a little finicky to get around. And I don't like the key placement. I think this is a really bad spot because if you go down, this is a prime spot to get bent or broken. And then the last piece with this is the grips. Now, I like the fact that it's thicker, it's chunkier and fatter, so it's better for someone like me with big hands, but it's this really hard plastic material that's just not comfortable. It doesn't absorb bumps and things, and even though it's got some like grooves and cuts in it to make it look grippy, it really isn't. Thankfully, with the grips at the very least, that's not the end of the world. You can buy proper dirt bike grips and swap these things out. They're pretty cheap, but with the key and the throttle, I really don't like that. I much rather have like a Sur-Ron style throttle and then a display that's somewhere up here or maybe down at the bottom and a key certainly in the center where it won't get damaged.
So I guess Tudio hasn't responded to every single complaint about this bike. And another thing that I noticed, which is not necessarily a complaint, but just something weird that I noticed in the assembly process, is how all the cables are routed. So first of all the electrical wires in the wiring harness that come from the handlebars all kind of culminate down right here to this center stem, and it goes straight through and actually bends underneath the fender to then go into the body, which is kind of a weird routing system. I don't know why they would do that, but thankfully the front fender does have space for that. It allows for that clearance, and maybe I guess they were just trying to get a cleaner look so it didn't look like it was as exposed as wires can be. But then you get to the rear brake cable where it comes down and does this weird loop-de-loop thing before going into the frame. And why not just have it routed so that it goes in between the triple trees and it has more of a straight shot up to the handlebars like every other bike? That way we're not running the risk of this potentially kinking when I'm turning the handlebars.
But besides those little things, everything else ergonomically on this bike is perfect. It is like the most comfortable bike that I've ever been on. I mentioned the seat earlier, and like I predicted, this is really nice. One of the most comfortable seats that I've ever seen on a mini bike. And then there are the handlebars. Even though the grips aren't the greatest, it's still got a high-rise handlebar, which is awesome because I love the placement. It is super comfortable. I don't feel like I'm cramped on this thing. Well, I kind of take that back when it comes to the foot pegs. They are high up, so I do feel like I'm squatting just a little bit there, but these things do bolt onto the side of the frame rather than being welded in, so you can easily get some extensions and drop this down a little bit. Oh, another thing on this comfort-wise is the suspension. That's always hit and miss on these bikes, and I feel like this is a definite hit. These have 39 42mm shocks in the front, which all of the other ones do have too, but this one actually has damping that I feel like is proportionate to my weight and the weight of the bike. It's not a pogo stick. It's not just diving under nothing and bouncing back like there's no rebound whatsoever. Same with the rear shock. I mean, sometimes the rear shock on these things are way too stiff. It's funny because they go way too stiff in the rear and then way too soft in the front where you can't even like bounce it, but this one, it actually bounces and it actually has some fluid damping to bring it back up again. And going through these little cul-de-sacs, the other thing that I can really appreciate with this thing is the throttle response. It is really, really smooth. Like, it still gives you low-end torque, but not in an abrupt way. It's not jarring in any way. It just feels really smooth. It feels effortless. Also, on a sound level, this is like one of the quietest e-bikes I've ridden. And that may sound obvious, but when you ride a lot of electric motorcycles like I do, you start to notice that there's a lot of different motor whines, a lot of different chain noises that you hear, stuff that you don't normally hear on a gas bike, because with a gas bike you just hear the exhaust all the time. But this one is particularly quiet. I really appreciate that. There's no rattles, there's no excessive chain noise. It sounds really refined.
You know what? I'm starting to see now why the Tudio Soleil has stuck around for so long, and why this bike in particular has been the go-to for modifying.
It's because it has all the essentials, all the ingredients necessary to build it up and make it something insane. It's got the big chunky frame, so it'll be able to withstand whatever you put in this. It's got the best ergonomics by far on these bikes, with the seat and the handlebar placement. It just makes it that much more comfortable. And if you don't plan on modifying it, or just minimally like the tuning settings, the throttle response and the smoothness is already there. It's perfect. This really is like the every person's bike. Can't forget to try it off-road. Yeah, this is where that suspension really shines. Torque a little bit, top speed though, not so much. Could use a little bit more in the top speed category, but everything else, this is just ripping. Seriously, what can't this bike do? You know what, I'll be honest, when I was starting this video, my impression was going to be that this was going to be a showcase in this is where bikes were 2 years ago, and now compared to all the EM5 models that we've seen, this is where we are at now. But I'm actually surprised that this thing is really ticking all the boxes. I guess it's more saying that this thing is still around because it's that good. I can see why everyone got on the Tudio train, and maybe it's fading away a little bit, but I feel like it should stick around. You know, the thought is still in my mind, like, what would make this thing better? And I think Pat Outdoors said it best, is that this really needs a Soleil Pro version. This bike needs to have a 60 volt. It would be even better though if it had a 72 volt in it, with a little bit more speed, a little bit more power, some upgraded forks, like you see with the EM5 Pro, the IN10 Pro, the Alpha Pro. This needs to be in that category, and it would smash it. I mean, we know this thing would take it because people have taken these bikes 80 plus miles an hour, so of course it can handle just a standard 72 volt in a tune. Maybe that's what I should do with this bike going forward. Turn this into the Tudio Pro that it's supposed to be. What do you think? I think that would make for a good project.
So I think that's exactly what we're gonna do with this bike going forward. Nothing major, not yet anyway, but just a few little things here and there to be able to provide an idea of what this could be from Tudio themselves. Give them a template maybe, so that they can turn something like this into what we want, the Soleil01 Pro, or maybe they want to call it the Soleil02. Honestly, this bike was so much better than I expected. Color me surprised, or orange. So if you want your orange with a side of Tudio, be sure to take a look at the description below and use code LEXDFOX, get yourself a little discount. Now I gotta start thinking about all the other things that I wanna do to this thing. There's so many things, like orange rims, orange forks, orange bars, orange grips, of course, on the orange bars. See what else? Orange seat cover, orange fenders, of course, orange highlights, maybe a little lighter or a little darker in the frame, give it a little bit of a pop. Do they make... Tuttio Soleil.